Your Muslim friend.
Most Muslims, I know many, are great people.
Watch this.
People.
You're listening to the Dean Obadala Show, where comedy meets politics and all things in between.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here Monday, May 6th. And live in studio, sitting right next to me, an actual Republican, folks. A Republican. Uh-oh, and he can't hear anything, which is even better. Shut off his mic. Let me make the points, and then he can't say anything in response. It'll be great. Doing it right now? You got it?
I can hear it
Shermichael Singleton is back, contributing host of Vox Media's and also Republican strategist. And you see him on MSNBC all the time. We've been on often together on Reverend Al's show and other shows. Right. Shermichael, nice to see you, my friend. He's also representing all millennial black people in the country tonight.
Oh, God.
It's your job. Who are Republicans? So it's like 9 of
That's
you.
That's like 1%.
So we were talking, we had a very spirited discussion, as often happens in the break on shows, right, even on TV or here. Mm-hmm. And we will now spill it over into real life, which he is trying to help. He's trying to be helpful to Democrats. Wink. And no, this is what I love. Shermichael, if I ask you a question about what should Democrats do, I trust you're telling me the right thing. But nothing annoys me more than watching Republican commentators on MS or CNN say, Democrats should do this. I'm like, I don't care what you think. You're a Republican. I respect. So I'm not kidding you. There's someone like, you're a hack. Why do I care what you think?
I'm not a hack. But
No, you're not. I'm not saying you. But saying the ones I see on TV.
But I get those tweets where people are like, why is Shermichael giving? He should give advice to his own party. Well, one, my party is listening to me, number one. All right. And number two, I am just as concerned about what's going on in the country with the president, with the executive and norms, just as my friends on the other side. And my reality is, look, I would rather have some normalcy and debate with Democrats about policy issues like we have in the past. Sure. And we have those fights and those battles, and we try to agree on the things we disagree on, and on the things we don't agree on, we fight like hell. But what we see now, it's just, I won't say it's unprecedented, because you look at our history, there's a lot of craziness. But at least for recent history, this is unprecedented. And so, look, I share the concern. And so when I try to offer advice, if you will, to Democrats as a Republican, as a conservative, I'm not saying, hey, you guys should do lockstep what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, look, if you guys are going to try to win this thing, don't be stuck on stupid. I'm just being honest. Don't be stuck on stupid, man. Don't
be stuck on stupid. There you go. Any Democrats want to speak to Shermichael, but don't be here. Let's talk about stupid. Let me ask you something here. And folks, this could be scary for all of us, but I'm going to get Shermichael's response first.
Okay.
I was speaking to a GOP consultant strategist who is, you would probably know the person, I won't say their name.
Okay.
And they don't like Trump, but they're not known as Never Trump, but they don't like Trump. And she was sharing with me, and she's been around many fights. Yeah. The concern of Republicans like her is that Donald Trump is grooming his son, Don Jr., to take over the party after he's gone, or even now as RNC chair, or to run for president after he's gone, like he's a monarch. And she said, we know that many Republicans, and the ones like me, she goes, are really concerned. Have you heard this?
I actually heard this like a year ago. This isn't new.
Oh, my God.
And what sort of concerns me about this, and I just interviewed a guy named Dante Scala, a professor at the University of New Hampshire, political science professor, for my Vox Media show. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the state of the Republican Party. And Donald Trump's already changed the party. The question right now is it forever changed? And is the country forever changed? And I predict if he does win or lose, I think we will see some norms that are just forever changed. And so even if Donald Trump loses the election in 2020, the Republican Party will still have remnants of Donald Trump around. He will have been the president. You can guarantee that there will be supporters still within the party leadership. And I'm almost certain, like most folks who run for president, look at the Bushes, they sort of want someone that they're familiar with to continue that legacy. Right. And when you think about someone like Trump, who's a megalomaniac in many ways, he's going to want to have a lineage, if you will. And who not better than Trump Jr., who I would say out of the 3 children is probably the most vocal defender of his father. And that concerns the hell out of me.
Here, a little spot quiz, and I know the answer because of some I'll share in a second. Besides George Bush, George the father and the son, who was the other president, father and son?
Oh shit! Can I say that on there?
You did now. We're done. The FCC just shut. No, you can. This is serious. If you don't curse,
sorry,
if you don't
Dean,
curse, something's wrong.
You just caught me off guard. With that one.
It's not something most people. I'm sure some people are yelling at the radio know the answer. No, it's not. But when I tell you the answer, you're going to know in a second. But it doesn't come to mind much because we don't talk about it. John Adams and his son John Quincy Adams.
Right.
So the second president and the 6th president. And the reason I know this, I just interviewed authors of a book about the Adams, which will play on my show when I come back from vacation.
That did not come to mind immediately.
No. And it's funny though how you talked about like norm shifting. They, especially John Quincy Adams, lost to Andrew Jackson, who's been compared to Trump a lot, and he's Trumpian in certain ways. Jackson at least served our military, it was served in our nation, didn't draft dodge and stuff. But this cult of personality, bigger than life guy was what Jackson was, and beat John Quincy Adams. And John Adams, the father, lost to Thomas Jefferson, who was similar but not the same. Jackson, So it's interesting to see. And what these guys did, like I was just interviewing these two professors from Louisiana State today who wrote this book, The Problem of Democracy. The framers were backbiting and competitive and badmouth, like John Adams badmouthed Ben Franklin, others badmouthed, and Hamilton was bad to some, and Jefferson was bad to others. Like they were going after each other. They had their own
politics. Is inherently a very combative sport, if you will.
Right.
It's never been this nice, calm, kumbaya, we all get along. But I think what we have seen, and we've tried to see more of this than normal, at least in the past, we try to be reserved in our combativeness, if you will, because at least in recent times, we've tried to understand that if we repeat what we've seen in the past, it's going to become extremely difficult to move towards some type of progress. That was sort of an agreed upon rule, if you will, on the left and the right. What Trump did, bringing up the point you just made, he sort of brought us back to some very combative times. And it's interesting to me because when we're on air and people say, well, this is unprecedented. I said, guys, we had senators shooting each other in gun duels, people beating the representatives, literally
Aaron
attacking
Burr was
each
the vice
other.
president.
I mean,
he shot Alexander Hamilton.
We've had some very, very difficult times in this country. And something that bothers me about all of us, this is Republicans and Democrats alike, human nature, we never learn from the past. We just keep repeating the same story over and over again. And you would think now, with technology so readily available at everybody's fingertips, someone like a Trump should not have been possible. It just shouldn't have been possible.
I agree with you, and no one. Well, I don't want to relitigate 2016 and why the Republicans didn't go after him because they didn't take him seriously for a long period of time. And perhaps if they had, I'm not really sure, perhaps they would have.
Well, there were folks on my side who were saying, and I was on a campaign at that time. I had many friends who were on Jeb, Rubio's crews, and there were individuals in the establishment who were saying, we need to perhaps change the rules to make it more difficult for this, because we don't want this guy gaining the nomination. We don't want that to happen. And this is a concern that I have with Democrats, and I've tried to say this months ago. They have to be very careful with so many people running. And I say this not as a political partisan, but just as an American. Don't make the same mistakes we made in 2016 by allowing someone like Trump to win, because what if they get a candidate who can't beat him, who's approved by the base, but can't beat Trump?
Maybe the base is going to choose our nominee. I mean, it's our primary, and it's going to be...
They need someone who can win those electoral states. That's what they need.
But the truth is, and you know politics very well, and what early polls might say who's the most likely to win and electable don't always mean that. And someone who can get you to have passion for someone and go out and make phone calls and knock on doors and give money. They might be in the field right now, but we're not feeling it. But after the first, don't forget, 1 month from now, begins Super Bowl. I mean, the first debates are going to be huge for us. It's going to be remarkable.
Right.
And in July, the next debates, it's going to be remarkable to see what's going on.
So someone who is a well-known front runner now, because of debate performance, we saw this on our side.
Sure,
could drop in numbers because of a performance. You can have someone who's relatively unknown do exceptionally well, which can increase name ID, increase ability to raise money, increase interest, if you will. Sure. And what's interesting about this, if I could, about Bernie Sanders, I was just reading some data before heading over here, and Bernie Sanders has sort of reached a cap. Many voters who are Democrats say, we know who Bernie is. We're interested in somebody else. So when I sort of look at this pool of candidates right now, what I'm wondering is not only who can build the infrastructure, but who can sustain with raising money, who can sustain by raising interest, one, with the base, because the base is going to sustain you until you become the nominee, if you will. Who's the person who's best in the position to do that? Now, I'm looking at folks like a Pete Buttigieg, although I'm not a big fan personally. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at someone like a Kamala Harris, who was just campaigning in Michigan. Now, people are saying, well, Michigan is so early. No. It's a very, very critical state for Democrats. So I'm looking at candidates like that who are being strategic. Buttigieg was just in rural Georgia. This guy's an openly gay guy in rural Georgia, which is conservative as heck. I'm looking at candidates who are doing those types of things because what that indicates to me is that they recognize, while I know a lot of arguments have been, we got to turn out minorities, keep in mind, and I'm going to give credit to Hillary Clinton. She didn't lose because she didn't get enough minority votes. She lost in those rural places. That is a reality. You look at places like Wisconsin, like Iowa, Pennsylvania. You look at those places where outside of major cities like a Detroit or Philly or Cincinnati, you don't have a lot of people of color.
True. I mean, when you add up Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, she lost by 77,000 votes.
Not a lot.
No,
not a lot.
Between 3 states, 77,000 votes is nothing. It's that's like a New York City race for mayor or something. That not even.
That's why I have said on TV, and I continue to say this, Dean. Democrats should not just write off some of those places. I'm not saying African Americans
don't matter. I think they should write off anybody.
I'm not
I
saying
think they should go out there and
Hispanics don't
campaign
matter.
for everyone.
But there has been an argument. I've seen a lot on TV where people are saying, well, we just should forget about those voters. And I keep saying, guys, you didn't lose by that much. You didn't lose by that much. Don't lose sight of that, Dean.
I think it's such a weird argument, though, and I've heard that many times. I've had that debate with fellow progressives and Democrats about this idea of chasing the mythical, the unicorn, the white male voter who voted once for a Democrat 20 years ago and he was drunk, and now we want to try to win him back, that kind of thing. Like, look, we're going to go out there and do the best message we can, and people are going to gravitate or not to it. And some of it's going to address parts of our constituency, our core, African Americans, Latinos, LGBT community, maybe even Muslims, my community, I don't know. But at the same time, that message is not exclusive to our communities. There are certain things specific to a community, but in general, it's a broader brush of here's what our policies are. We're going to have an activist government. We're going to help you. We do believe in some regulations. We want to have Wall Street taxed appropriately and Main Street being able to grow. So it's going to be these broad things. But in between, if you go to policy details, and how many people look at policy details, you're going to see things for certain communities like that are going to resonate, whatever it might be, to reduce black unemployment or immigration reform, whatever it might be. So I don't think it's like, I think you can get both. I think not. But no one gets everyone. You just run.
Well, that's impossible.
You
but
run
I'm
as a
just
progressive.
saying,
You run as a progressive on the issues that we're going to run on.
Right,
Conservatives should run on their issues.
I'm just saying, don't ignore people who could help them cross the finish line. You don't need a lot of them. Again, Trump only won the key electoral states by less than 100,000 votes.
I know.
You don't need a lot. So what I'm saying is, if you ignore those people, you repeat what happened.
No one should ignore them. I'm just saying don't chase them. I just send your message. Go out there, do your thing. And look, in the Democratic primary, it's one thing. The general elections are different. We know that same thing with the Republican.
Yeah.
In our party right now, there are certain constituencies that are the greatest supporters. They are the backbone of this party. And I think they should be listened to.
No, I agree.
And then you pivot.
I just hope that backbone doesn't push candidates too far left.
We'll see what happens. We'll see how many people. It's going to be all caricatures of candidates once we get to the general.
Well, that's true.
Trump going like they're communists. They want open borders. They're going to take your children and sell them on eBay. Like just crazy stuff, right? And like, why not? Just say crazy stuff. And Democrats, we don't have to do it. We have a caricature we're running against. We're an evil cartoon character who is so over the top. He's got so many faults. That's what makes it so hard with him. Like,
but we know. We know all of these things. That's what I think is another thing that people shouldn't downplay. Talk about the issues. Talk about there are legitimate arguments to make about bread and butter issues where you're not focusing directly on Trump all the time.
True.
And I think you can make a distinction between what we have seen and what, if I was advising a Democrat, what you could bring that we haven't seen thus far. But I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, look, you look at recent polls and half the country says, look, we dislike Trump, but you ask them about the economy and how they're doing, and they say, well, yeah, I don't like him, but my life overall is pretty good.
All right, so we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about a poll from Monmouth, which I think I sent you, which talked about how people view the economy. Then you get to the next question, which Rick Unger, who's not on tonight, but he comes on frequently, said Democrats should be asking, the economy is good for most Americans, but is it good for you? And when that question got asked, it was a different
answer.
So we're going to talk about that in a second. When we come back with more of the Dean Obidala Show and our friend Shermichael Singleton right here.
The Dean Obidala Show.
Whoever's the next president, we should call him the 45th president of the United States. And this will go down as a dark time in America that we'll never refer to again.
SiriusXM Progress. And now, more of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live Monday, May 6th. In studio here, Shermichael Singleton. You see him if you watch MSNBC. He's on all the time. Used to be a CNN contributor, but now he's on the MS doing a lot of great stuff, even though he's a Republican, contributing host of Vox Medias. And we were talking before we went to the break how, top line is the economy. Most Americans, I think 56% in a recent poll, think the economy is going well. But according to the same Monmouth poll, and Monmouth is a highly rated poll, said a majority say that 54% say the economy, though, under Trump has not helped them not much or not at all when you combine the two. And I think that's interesting. And they also said they felt that over majority find that they, in their view, their perception is the wealthy have really gotten the benefits and the fruits of the Trump administration. Do you think there's any room there objectively for Democrats to run on the economy or just ignore the economy and move on to something else?
No, because you look at most data, and I mean, even if you break it down between parties, Republican and Democrat, they're very concerned about even Trump voters. And so, look, if I were Democrats, I wouldn't ask the question specifically because, as you and I were talking, people don't want to be told, oh, the economy is doing horrible. Like, oh, well, no, actually, I'm doing okay, or vice versa. I think the argument or the message should be to the American people, we see the stock market doing great. Yes, companies are doing great, but I want to help you do great. The average person, the regular guy, regardless of white, black, whatever, my message is to try to help you do better so that you can take care of your family or give back to the community or whatever the case may be. Because the reality is most people don't have stocks. They just don't.
Is it a little under half?
There was recent data that just came out that showed almost half of Americans have less than $10,000 in their retirement accounts and their savings accounts. So that should be the message to the American people. Yes, everything is doing great for those at the top. But my argument to you or my appeal to you is, how can I help the average guy do better?
And I think that's
Trump
compelling.
Hasn't really delivered there.
Right. And that's very compelling. And I agree with you because Shermichael and I were talking in the break that, what I've learned watching campaigns is that someone running for president can't tell people the economy is worse than they feel it is, nor can they tell it's better than how they feel it is. So if the economy is going great for your family and somebody's running for president going, it sucks, like, no, it's actually pretty good. And conversely, and maybe even cruelly in a way, if you're told by Trump, the economy's envy of the world, and you're still struggling, it's got to hurt a little bit more. I mean, because you're like, the president's saying it's great, so he doesn't care about me anymore. I'm out. I'm sort of ignored. And when you have 54% of Americans saying they've been helped either not much or not at all during the nation's growth under Trump, it just doesn't mean they're not going to vote for Trump if they were Trumpers, because it's not just about one issue to a lot of them.
Yeah, it's not.
But it is interesting, and I think there might be room. Now, this pure speculation, so there's no wrong answer. Right now, the unemployment down to 3.6%. Historically, it's a great number.
Yeah.
Still, labor participation is not. I didn't look at the number after the last thing. It's still kind of static. In any event, that's a great number now. In a year from now, flash forward a year from now, do you think it's still at 3.6%? Or are we? Because it's all about trends in elections. If people see it trending up, then Democrats have an argument. Like it was going good when he gave the tax cut to the wealthy companies, but that's expired, folks. And now look, we're up to 4%, 4.2%, and there's no stopping it now.
I mean, look, I think the saving grace for Trump right now, and I don't care what any of my Republican friends were to say, I think they would all agree with this, at least those who are operatives and strategists. His saving grace is the economy.
Sure.
That is probably one of the single greatest things that will benefit him outside of the incumbency for re-election next year.
Thank President Obama for that.
If that changes, he's going to be in serious trouble. But look, I think when you look at those economic numbers, even if you break them down racially, while particularly for African Americans, while the unemployment rate is still higher than it is for white Americans, when you sort of do an aggregate, if you will, over the past several years, even decades, when compared to white Americans, it is at its lowest when in comparison. And that's for the other ethnic groups as well. And so I think those are things that do benefit Donald Trump. Now, I think that there is a legitimate question for Democrats to ask. I would, if I was advising Democrats, yes, unemployment is at record lows, but are you actually earning higher wages?
Right.
That's a disparate question, and that's a question that you don't really see talked about
good jobs
in the press. Are they
the
good jobs? Yes, you're
good
finding
jobs.
a job, but has your actual life improved? That's a different question.
And look at this. I mean, and for everyone, and there's some Trumpers who listen. God bless them. And unemployment 3.6%. Stock market is at just about record highs right now. Yet Donald Trump's approval rating is just ticked up to 42.7%. I mean, it's ticked up from 41, and that's not. It was a little higher a couple months ago at 42.8%, but it's been stuck in this range, and this is the average on 538. So I'm looking at the average. Yeah. So and I use this one to be consistent. A guy with these kind of numbers should be at 55, 58% approval rating.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's only Trump that stands in the way of being above that. And now I think it's so baked in. At best, you see a little bit of movement, even as disapproval is at 52.4% using the same 538 average. And that's kind of baked in. Every now and then a little spike, a little down.
Right.
It's just staying in these numbers.
So the numbers are actually interesting when you look at the data, and I've been following these trends for quite a while now. And though his numbers are at a historic low when you compare it to other presidents, when you also compare, I guess, the movement, if you will, the average of previous presidents at this point in time in their presidency, Trump, and people may dislike that I'm going to say this, but I'm only going by the data and the trends, he actually is doing pretty good for where he is. And I know that sounds crazy, Dean, but
I'm looking right now at historical net approval of all presidents at these many days into their presidency, which is 837 days in. And right now, some presidencies way below. I mean, right now, just using 538, President Obama had 6.3% higher at this. And George W. Bush, we had a war going on that was different. Bill Clinton was much higher. The only person he had a higher approval rating right now at this was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter.
So let me. This is what I mean here. So not to get into all the nuances of this, but when you compare, so if you were to look at President Obama or George W. Bush or any previous president, at least within the past couple of decades, maybe 3-4 decades, when you compare their averages within their entirety of their presidency, that's what I'm saying.
Interesting.
So for Trump, when you compare where he has been throughout his presidency, as far as the fluctuation in his average, it is actually pretty good when you compare that. That's what I'm saying.
You're absolutely right. If you get away from the first few months, which was sort of a horrible honeymoon, he went down to averages around 38, 39%. There's a long trough there.
Right.
Look at the graph. And now he's gone up to about 42%. That's where he's staying now, 41, 40%. But to me, I look at...
There's not a lot of movement.
Right. I look at the last election, right before the last election, November 2018, and he is slightly lower now, just teeny, 0.03, which shows that if these numbers stay the same, and that's any kind of indicator of the turnout we might see in 2020, with added more people coming out and things stay consistent, it would be a big victory for Democrats. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not one of these Democrats going, I think if we come out big, we're going to win November 2020, but there's no guarantee. And we have to work really, really hard. So
There isn't a guarantee, and look, I would say when you look at the seats that Democrats won in 2018, to sort of utilize that, if you will, as I guess as a moniker of what may come in 2020.
You tell me your theory, then I'm going to share something. You tell me.
I think a lot of those seats were seats that were previously held by Republicans.
Right.
Those are districts that could, in theory, go either. Well, not even in theory, reality, they could go either way.
Sure.
And what I would be sort of concerned and careful with is not to prejudge the direction of the voters within those districts. Because just because they voted for a Democrat for Congress in 2018, that does not necessarily translate to their willingness to vote for a Democrat for the presidency. Those are two disparate things.
That's a great point.
So that's how I would analyze this.
No, I agree with you, Shermichael. I'm talking about Shermichael Singleton, contributing host of Fox Media's and Republican Strategy.
Vox. Don't say you said Fox.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vox.
They're going to kill me now.
VOX, folks. Vox Media. And you do it with Elizabeth Plank?
Yeah, Liz Plank. That's I love Liz.
So I thought you were going to make another point. I agree with you because they voted for a Democrat. Very much it could have been they did because they wanted the Democrat to be a check on Trump because they had too much in their district. They were a swing district or slightly red. And they're like, we want a Democrat to be a check on this guy because he's got the Senate now. He's got the House. And I think we need that.
Right.
But they have voted for him to be a check. So the question is, in their mind, is just simply oversight a check? If you just being there, is that a check? Or is impeachment, if the evidence presented by a Republican former federal prosecutor, former FBI director, former U.S. attorney, Robert Mueller, who's made a case in his report, in my view, as a lawyer, that there's obstruction and that you should have an impeachment inquiry. And that's, I think, a fair debate to have, to say, I wasn't elected to embrace the Green New Deal and everything about that. I get that. They're not in districts like that.
Right.
But I was elected to be a check on Donald Trump, and I think most people would agree they were elected to be a check on Donald Trump. So if they're not going to do that, are they letting down people who voted for them? And I know impeachment might be further than they expected, but that's a natural outgrowth, and they can make a compelling argument that we are just doing an impeachment inquiry based on the exact four corners of this document that Robert Mueller gave us. We're not adding new things. We're not witch hunting. We're not fishing. We're not doing anything. We're doing it on this report.
I would not even use the word impeachment. And
Oh, my God.
Wait, hear me out. And I know some of your audience may say, "Oh, God, this guy's Republican. He's crazy." Hear me out here,
Everyone's
folks.
saying that right
Hear
now.
me out.
All right, go ahead.
I would have as many hearings as possible, public as possible. I would try to release as much evidence as possible with the knowledge of the background knowledge of knowing I am trying to build a case for impeachment, but I'm not saying it. I'm just putting the evidence out there. I'm holding the hearings public so that when there is an insurmountable amount of evidence, then I can say, look, we've had it all public. We've been transparent. It's all there. Now there is grounds for impeachment. Because at that point, you will have swayed the public. That's what Democrats have to do here. They have to sway the public that this is an important enough to
And how do you
president.
do that when Donald Trump tonight, right before you came, you probably saw, but if not, Mnuchin, Secretary of Treasury, said no tax returns.
Yeah.
That the Oversight Committee has served subpoenas on Deutsche Bank, and you've got them being sued by Trump in his personal capacity. His daughter is suing them to prevent it. You've got Trump saying no Robert Mueller, even though he cannot stop Robert Mueller completely from testifying, saying no testimony. And the stonewalling goes on. How do you do it? And, when I look back, right before you came on, I shared with people the timeline. Kenneth Starr gives his report about Clinton and Lewinsky, September 9th, 1998, to Congress. By October 5th, 1998, less than 30 days later, House Judiciary Committee, controlled by Republicans, launches a congressional impeachment inquiry. And they did an inquiry for the next 2 full months, over 2 months. And then they approved 3 articles of impeachment after that. But the whole country focused because they called it an impeachment inquiry.
That's my
That's
point.
what I want.
You make the case to the people. I've said this on MSNBC. The burden is on Democrats to make this case. I think there's a reason why Donald Trump is so concerned about Robert Mueller. When you look at polling that's been conducted on how the American public feels about Robert Mueller, with the outside of the extreme hardline Republicans, the guy is relatively respected.
Yes.
And if Robert Mueller testifies publicly and says some things where even Republicans are like, holy smoke, then I think that benefits Democrats. Again,
I agree. You can wait for that to have the impeachment inquiry.
Right. I just think the public can be swayed on this.
Sure.
They can't be swayed on this. And I think as a Republican, ethics do matter. Morals do matter. And just because Donald Trump has, sort of given something tangible to the various factions within the party, such as the Supreme Court or deregulation of the military or taxes, I mean, there are groups within the party that can say, wow, I despise him. There's something tangible that I like, and I'm willing to say, because I've been given something that's important to me, I'm going to stick with him. I get all of those things. But what in the hell happens when this is a Democrat? What happens then? You're going to say, oh, my God, the country's gone up in flames. We got to get rid. No, you can't say anything because you've lost the moral ground. You've lost the ethical ground.
But you're actually thinking that some of these Republicans actually have a sense of shame and decency.
Well,
they don't.
But they should.
But I agree with you. But if, let's just say, the shoe's on the other foot, a report about President Obama comes out where it says point blank that, the Russians thought they perceived it would help them if Obama won in 2012 against Mitt Romney, and that the campaign, literally the words were that, and that from the Mueller report, and that the Trump campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen or released through the Russian efforts, that they openly, Trump over 100 times cited WikiLeaks after DHS said that was stolen from the Russians and directed, and then the Sun meets with, if one of his daughters, the daughters of Obama met somewhere with Russians, and then after the investigation goes on, there's President Obama tweeting about a witness cooperating with the government, saying you should look at his father-in-law. He's the real criminal. Would Republicans not? I've made this case earlier. I'm not kidding. Not only would they do an impeachment inquiry, they would be right. They would be right to do an impeachment inquiry. They would be Benghazi. They would be right.
And again, this comes down to a question of morality and a question of ethics. And while I do understand the politics behind why Nancy Pelosi is cautioning this, and I agree with her politically, as someone who's worked on a lot of campaigns, I understand her thought process behind this. But there is a much larger question about what type of standards, norms, and customs of behavior we are going to tolerate in this country. And I am afraid that if we don't set some type of a precedent now, we will have forever changed our society. Conflict. You think about what leads to their demise. It's always suicide. I think it was John Quincy Adams, I believe.
John Adams.
John Adams, rather. Who
there's no
said
democracy who has not committed suicide.
And we're doing that. And so, again, for my party, I understand the politics behind why those who are elected support this guy. But my God, morals, ethics, those are things in leaders that were sought after for a reason. We expected leaders to be better than the rest of us, or at least to thrive to be better than the rest of us, because we looked to those individuals for guidance. And we're not seeing that right now. And the country becomes more polarized. We become more divided on both sides. People sort of go into their political corners because they say, well, I want to hear from folks who only think the way I think. Hell, I'm a Republican, but I'm still concerned about things that Democrats care about. I'm still open to having those debates on how to move policy forward, because I recognize in the party, they're pretty much saying, screw ethics, screw morals. The folks are getting something tangible. This is what they want, so we're going to go with that. That's not what I call leadership.
I agree with you, my friend. Let's take a quick break. Come back with our friend Shermichael Singleton right after this.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
Back to the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live Monday, May 6th in studio with our friend Shermichael Singleton. Coming up next hour, Danielle Moody Mills, the complete opposite of Shermichael, the warrior princess of the resistance, who is hosting, I think, today again on Mark Thompson's show in the morning, waking up at whatever time, but she's going to stay up and come on our show, and I think she's back there tomorrow. So, Shermichael, what would it take? we're never going to get 20 Republicans to come over to remove Trump. I get that. That's just not going to happen.
All right.
But do you think there are some, if objective evidence was put together by the House in articles of impeachment, and they made a showing, what would it take? Would it take the base of the GOP to go, this guy really is a criminal?
That's the only way.
And that's unlikely going to happen unless it's so overwhelming, because it doesn't matter. I've talked to Trump supporters, and I will bring up something Trump has done, objectively horrible.
Sure.
And I'll get, not even kidding, it's like a cliche, but what about Hillary's emails? Or what about Obama did this? Or what about...
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I just asked you about...
I do think that there is this idea and notion among many in the public that politics is just inherently corrupt. And the difference with Trump is we're just sort of seeing it on full display. He's not doing anything new. He's only doing what merely goes on behind the scenes. I think a lot of people actually do believe that, to the point that you just made. But in order to for rank and file Republicans, particularly those in the Senate, to move forward on impeachment, you would have to see movement within the Republican base. And as I said earlier, I brought up the Professor Dante Scala, who I interviewed at the University of New Hampshire a couple weeks ago. And he was just saying that Donald Trump has solidified the Republican Party so much so that it is truly the party of Trump. Right. And Trump would have to pretty much go out and say, I did X, Y, and Z things. I'm horrible for those people. I mean, not to be funny, but I'm just being honest. I just don't see anything that will force those individuals to change their minds on who this guy is.
Well, if Trump admitted to doing something, but said, look, I did this, but you know what, everyone does this, or no big deal, or fake news or something, they go, okay.
And they would say, yeah, he's right. He said he did it like everybody else. So what's the problem? No, I mean, look, I just... This is what makes this moment in time so difficult, is that you do have at least a good 30 to 35% of the country that is just unwavering in their support, no matter what you present to them. And the issue with that is that you have people who represent these folks, and they need those folks to get reelected. They're not going to move. Dean, it doesn't matter. They're not going to move. Now, that is not to say that if there is enough evidence presented to the public that Democrats shouldn't move forward in the House, if it is merely to say we find these things to be so egregious, we're setting a tone to say this is unacceptable, we're not going to accept it. Whether it passes in the Senate or not, oh, the heck well. At least we've done our job to say we got to draw the line at some point, whether Republicans stand with us or not. Look, I think the Republican Party may pay an ultimate price here in the long run. I truly, truly believe that. I think the Republican Party has relied so much on moving away from minorities, relying so much on white Americans, particularly white men, a declining population. And this is I have no animus towards white men. I do think that their concerns should be listened to as the concerns of everyone else. But I think the Republican Party is playing a game that in the long run just isn't on our side.
So what would you like to see? You're a young Republican of color.
Yeah.
You want to have a longevity in your party, and you want to see your party, right? Because this is important to you, your party.
Yeah, I want to see a diverse party.
Right. So how does it change?
You got
you have to be post-Trump. You just look at post-Trump.
People, look, I think even your listeners would say, look, I may not be a Republican, but I do think there should be a healthy Republican Party. If Democrats were going through something like this, I'm not a Democrat, but I respect the notion and idea that people who are Democrats should have the choice to belong to a healthy party. I appreciate the viability in having parties that can debate those hardcore issues. That intellectual exchange of ideas is what moves and propels the country forward. It becomes very, very difficult to sustain as a republic when there's just only one party. It does become difficult. And so I think for the Republican Party, it would have to become a party that's open to people who are diverse, whether they're gay, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Muslim, black. You got to become open. You have to be forward thinking. Conservatism, at least when you look at like Edmund Burke, who wrote a lot about the French Revolution, this notion that you're conserving things so much so that you're anti-progressive is not the way conservatism was originally written at all. And that should be clear. I think what American conservatism has sort of morphed itself into is this party that is anti-progress. Well, human nature is in essence progressive.
Sure.
So how in the hell can you say, well, we're going to stop what is an innate part of who we are, which is to be better than our former selves? And that is not to say that there aren't certain traditions that conservatives should say these are the things that should be preserved about culture, about society. Those are legitimate arguments to make to people that I think, regardless of race and ethnicity, or even gender differences, that people would say, okay, I can appreciate some of those customs of behavior that the conservatives are saying that's important. But I just think the party has to be open. Like, look, I'm conservative, but I would welcome people who are LGBT, who may say, well, hey, I'm a gay person, but I'm concerned about the economy, or deregulation is an important thing for me. They should have a place in this party, but you can't have a place in a party when the party is discriminating practically against an overwhelming majority percentage of what represents America today.
But it's interesting what you're bringing up, and I agree with you that your party should be more open. That's good for America. There was an autopsy. When was it? Years ago.
It was in
2012? After Mitt Romney lost, who in retrospect seems like the nicest guy in the world. He might.
I worked for him. I did work for his campaign.
And he might not walk the walk we want, but he talks the talk at times and actually seems like a good human being. We might disagree. Yeah. There was an autopsy then. Reince Priebus, and we're going to change. We're going to be more open. The next election, you got worse, 2016. I know it's not your doing, but I'm saying
that is what concerns me, is that things have indeed gotten worse, and Donald Trump won without really having to focus on minorities. Although he did get, I think, about 30% of the Hispanic vote. Republicans have typically done fairly well with the Hispanic community. And I think, we could continue to do so potentially. But look, I think the result of Donald Trump's election in the minds of folks at the RNC and other Republican-leaning organizations is that we don't need to focus as much on diversity and outreach and inclusion. And as I said earlier, I just think that's a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
People are open to the idea of conservative policies, but when people feel that you don't want them, why would they vote for you? I don't care how great your policies are. Why would I want to be a part of something that I don't feel included? And that's why, as a minority who happens to be a Republican, I keep fighting so freaking hard, Dean, for the reality of a party that is inclusive, because I do think that there are tenets of the Republican Party that people can say, I like these things. I can belong to that party, but that is not going to happen if we continue in the direction that we're going. And if the party does continue in the direction that it's going, then even I will find myself as a non-affiliated voter.
You'd be welcome to Democratic Party. We like it. You know how many times I tell Michael Steele that? I'm like, Michael, you're a Democrat. What are you kidding? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back with a friend, Shermichael Singleton, right after this.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back to the Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here Monday, May 6th. So let me ask you, are credit card bills keeping you up at night? Interest rates in double digits? Well, here is the way to deal with all of it. One of our new sponsors, Lightstream, L-I-G-H-T Stream. They're a division of SunTrust Bank, one of the biggest banks in the country. And they have a great new credit card consolidation loan. And get a fixed rate as low as 5.95% ARP with autopay. You can save thousands in interest, and guess what? There are no fees. I'm not kidding. No fees for loans between $5,000 and $100,000 to do credit card consolidation. And you can apply and get money literally that same day. That's how quickly they work at Lightstream. Again, a division of SunTrust, one of the nation's largest banks, so you can have peace of mind. And they're actually offering to save you on the interest rate because you listen to the show. You get an additional interest rate discount if you go to lightstream.com/Dean. That's lightstream.com/Dean. You got to use the /Dean for the deal, but you actually save money on the interest rate. You can't beat it. So check it out. If you got credit card debts, and they also have other personal loans, a list of them. If you go to lightstream.com, you'll see it. You know, it's subject to credit approval, of course. The rate includes 0.50 auto pay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. But check it out. Go to lightstream.com/Dean for more information and save yourself some money by paying off your credit card debts. So Shermichael Singleton's been doing some research in the break. Shermichael, what did you find?
So, look, I just want to say really quickly why this is a concern, diversity for the Republican Party. According to the Pew Research Center, by 2045, the U.S. as a whole is projected to become a majority-minority country. And next year, as in 2020, the entire under-18 population will be majority non-white. And in less than a decade, the total population under 30 will be majority non-white. If you are a party that relies on majority white, what does that tell you? You are in trouble.
Those are not good numbers if you're playing on. And, you know, Lindsey Graham bluntly said a few years ago that we're not producing enough angry white men to sustain us. And he meant it in a way like the Republican Party has to embrace more people of color and more diversity. And I don't know. Look, Trump wins by running truly as a white-based race.
But that's a short-term vision. It's a short-term goal. It's a short win. That's not the win of the future. And that's why I say no matter what happens next year, the long term is on the side of the Democrats. If we
Is
don't
there
make
any
changes.
William that can... William Weld's running. We have like a minute left.
Weld, yeah.
Will anybody... Is there any Republican who could actually run that could chip away, not beat him, but actually scare him in the primary?
No. I don't think so. No one's going to do it. Maybe Larry Hogan. He's a Republican running Maryland that's controlled by Democrats in the state House and state Senate. A high approval rating with African Americans in the state of Maryland.
What about David Duke? Maybe he give him a run for it. I'm kidding. Sure, Michael doesn't like that. So, because you got to run to the right of Trump, so you got to go full clan. Sure, Michael, my friend, thanks for coming to the studio and spending an hour here. I really appreciate it. Shermichael Singleton. Check him out on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Shermichael_.
So check it out, folks. Or Vox VOX Media, a co-host with Liz Plank, who you also see on MSNBC all the time. When we come back, Daniel Moody Mills is going to join us for the hour. We'll try to take some calls as well right here on the Dean Obadala Show.